Hi, my name is Jacqueline, and I'm going to do mental health represented in the media. And I will be mentioning suicide because I will be talking about 13 reasons why. So if you're not in a good headspace, please skip over my video. Thank you. Today, I will specifically be talking about Kanye's bipolar disorder, and as I mentioned, 13 reasons why. Kanye's bipolar disorder, I will be talking about what bipolar disorder is, and I wanted to talk about this because of all his recent anti-Semitic and racist remarks, and what his views have changed for his bipolar disorder. And for 13 Reasons Why, I know that they put it out for a reason, and I want to talk about why they put it out and if their goal of helping teens was completed, and if it was worth perhaps people committing cognation suicide and what cognation suicide is. I will be talking about that. So, bipolar disorder is when you are experiencing low depressive states, very low depressive states, and then you will be in hypomania, which is bipolar 2, or regular mania, which is bipolar 1. And you have to be in those for about 1 week or longer for mania. So, what is mania? Mania is a euphoric sense of mind, right? And so you're going to be hyperactive, you're going to be jumping from project to project. You need you need engagement constantly. You're not going to be sleeping very well. You're going to be sleeping like 3 hours a day, and you'll be fine. You'll be like, it'll be like if you did nothing, but because of that, you're going to have poor judgment and poor planning. You're also going to have, wow, it just disappeared. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. So you're also gonna have poor planning and poor judgment, and you're also gonna have high self-esteem, which is gonna make you kind of like a godlike, feel godlike, I think. And then you're gonna be more energetic. So I want to compare Kanye's or Ye's view of his bipolar disorder. So this is going to be, I'm going to play a clip from Jimmy Kimmel's 2018 interview where he talks about his bipolar disorder. He's very open about it, and he was very open about it not too long ago, actually. And then compared to right now, which this interview was taken, or the one on the right would be taken in December 11th, and he is very disconnected. So let's watch that. Sorry.
Like you avoided this album title.
Yeah, no, I don't.
I mean, what it says right here on the
I hate
title.
being bipolar. It's awesome. I have a theory about you, so tell me if this is correct. I feel like you feel like being bipolar is part of what makes you brilliant, part of what makes you you, and you embrace it.
Yeah, I think that's another one of those things where people are like, "How are you going to talk about it?" The funny thing is, this is something I was like on the internet before. It was kind of funny, but it's not an opposite. It's not I hate being bipolar. It's awesome. It's actually it drives more of how you really feel. It doesn't do an opposite thing. So I think it's important for us to have conversations about, open conversations about mental health, especially with me being Black, because we never had therapists in the Black community. We never approached taking medication. And I think it's good that when I had my first complete blackout at age 5, my mom didn't fully medicate me because I might have never been Ye. And there's times where at least I'm happy that I know, even for this interview, I knew I wanted to stay in a calm state because by the time I got to TMZ, I was ramped up. So what was awesome is that the world got to really experience someone in a ramped up state. And that's when you get these comments that just shoot out, almost like Tourette's. Good. Like you avoided this album title.
Yeah, no, I don't.
What it says right here on the
I hate being bipolar. It's awesome. I have a theory about you, so tell me if this is correct. I feel like you feel like being bipolar is part of what makes you brilliant, part of what makes you you, and you embrace it.
Yeah, I think that's another one of those things where people are like, "How are you going to talk about it?" The funny thing is, this is something I was on the internet before. It was kind of funny, but it's not an opposite. It's not I hate being bipolar. It's awesome. It's actually
interview.
drives more
And this is
of
right
how
after
you really
all
feel.
the
It doesn't
DEF
do
CON
an
tweets
opposite
and
thing.
anti-risk, but it
You know what's interesting about the DEF CON tweet is, and the relationship to Balenciaga, the enemy's plan is set up far before the fallout. It feels like they put me in the front of the show and swapped Kim out so that I could be the face at the time when the photos hit. But God had me tweet the DEF CON, and then they had to cut ties with me. So they weren't able to use me in that way. And I just feel blessed. We have to lean into the Spirit in all things we do. Like my dad said, you know, they're gonna smear your name if you're associated with Hitler. Yeah, obviously. What are you talking about? Of course, Dad. That good idea. Thanks a lot. The truth is, Jesus says, love everyone. God says, love everyone. For me, I believe that in no way, I am not bipolar. I'm not in some kind of episode, but I may be slightly autistic, like Rain Man. And that's part of my superpower. That's the reason why I can produce tracks and design and do so many things. But what I can't do, there's two things that I can't do. I can't accept hate, and I can't hate. You know what's interesting about the DEF CON tweet is, and the relationship to Balenciaga.
I feel like watching this video,
the enemy's plan
completely different
is set up
and he
far
now
before
doesn't relate
the fallout.
being bipolar. He doesn't feel like
it feels like
says is autistic.
they put me in the front of the show and swapped Kim out so that I could be the face at the time when the photos hit.
So this is what article I'm going to be referencing is an opinionated article by Dr. Coakley, and he's a black psychologist, and he wanted to speak about how Kanye, being a black person with a mental health disorder, is affecting the society, right? So he wants us to know in his paper, he states that he wants us to look at his disorder from a very cultural view, and he thinks that he could perhaps have anti-self disorder, alien self disorder, and self-destructive disorder. So anti-self disorder is going to be hostility towards anything and all things black or African, and the Dr. Coley thinks that it is because why he might have this is because he supported Trump, who was openly anti-black and was saying racist remarks to towards Africans. And then alien self disorder is when you are being alienated by the African or black community culture. And so you're becoming more materialistic, and the reason why he thinks that he might have that is because of his billionaire status that is very important to him. And he might have being self-destructive disorder, and that is when you are basically kind of like coping with white supremacy, and you're just trying to survive it, so you decide to go with it, you know? And he states that, like, his racist and anti-Semitic remarks might come from being anti-black and kind of like self-hatred. And his remarks are allowing people to say anti-Semitic remarks because they think if he says it, it's okay. And so for 13 Reasons Why, their goals were to have a creative conversation, make help easier, and provide templates and pamphlets to talk about suicide. So those were aims more towards like parents and counselors and teens to talk about, hey, I don't feel okay, or hey, I'm noticing you don't feel okay, and just getting help. And then they also wanted to reduce the stigma of mental health. And so one big fear that people had was people committing cognation suicide, which is when you're like committing suicide because someone else in your family already did it, or someone around you, so in your school. Like, it's a lot of talk about it, so that you feel like you should too, which is not okay. Which is, like, if you're gonna do something like this TV show, which is centered around suicide, like a person committing suicide, then you would have to consider that. So this is going to come from two studies. The first one and the second one kind of goes into both of them. These two studies kind of like they support each other. So the first one would be a study done in 2023, and it was basically about teens from different countries because they wanted the cultural aspect of it, and they wanted them to pick a character that either Hannah, Clay, or Tony, or another character, but the main three were the ones that they really wanted to pick from were Hannah, Clay, and Tony. And they wanted to see if they felt like they were connected to them, and if after watching the first season, they were able to be more empathetic, how they felt about it, and everything else. So they ended up actually seeing that the kids were more typically empathetic. And in my other study, which was in 2021, they also felt like they were more empathetic. That would have to go more to the point two. In that study, they asked people from New Zealand, teenagers from New Zealand, to like kind of they did an interview with them, and they asked them how they felt about it, what like their reactions were, and just trying to be blatantly obvious, like honest. I mean, so they did find that more teens were trying to be more attentive to their friends, like asking like, "Hey, are you okay? What's going on?" Talking about what they're feeling, and they also were more trying to be more vigilant about how they're treating other people and how that might affect them. But those teens from New Zealand felt like the TV show kind of had jumbled up messages. Like at one point, the counselor didn't want to help Hannah when she asked for help, and she wasn't talking to her parents. So they're like, well, should we ask for help or not? And then they also found it unrealistic because, like, knowing either whether they felt like they should commit suicide or having somebody in their life that committed it they felt like Hannah Baker, like the reasons why she committed suicide was unrealistic. Like nobody would actually commit it out of like vengefulness, basically, with all the tapes and everything. They felt like it was saying that it was your fault that somebody would kill themselves and X, Y, and Z, which they felt like was very much not real. They felt like it was more like what you do specifically would make someone kill themselves versus what their actual mental health is, whether they're being depressed or not. And they also found that the finale scene for season 1 was very awful, very triggering. So that scene is when they took it down now, but it was when they showed Hannah Baker in the bathtub, committing suicide, and they found it very triggering. They found it very wrong that they should not have seen that. So, yeah, that is basically. I feel like yes, it did create conversation, but they also in the second studies found like they weren't really talking about mental health. They were talking about what was happening in the TV show. They were kind of desensitized to it. They were just like if it was any other regular TV show. So I think that it did accomplish its goal about getting people to talk about suicide, or like mental health, but it didn't leave a lasting impact. And thank you for watching my video.